lunchtime, and some students didn't even interact with the piece of art, didn't think about it, but some others thought, what does this mean? So we were starting to think about, so what do the students feel about those issues, about this person who might be positive, who might be experiencing trauma on the campus? This is Cyan spoke a little bit about sexual concurrency. This is a project that we did around sexual concurrency, where we talked about a sexual network, and we got students, they blew up bubbles of bubble gum on a board of sexual partners. What would it mean if you're introducing a sexual partner? What if the partner was violent? All kinds of issues. And then this is another project where we had the same one, but it's around students cut bread from different kinds of breads. What does it mean if there were people from different sexual networks, and how can we understand that process? This project was very interesting, where the first year students looked at masculinity and HIV. I'm sure some of you might be aware of the Facebook page, UCT Confessions, and here students anonymously post, or people anonymously post issues that are happening at the university. And so this group of students used that page and posted issues around notions of masculinity and asked students to comment about it. And this is just the replication of it and how students interacted with the concepts that they placed on the site. And it was a really popular project. This is another one, another student who, he spoke about HIV/AIDS in a grid, and he walked around in a grid on campus in that kind of description, sorry. Okay. Then we worked on a third-year project, specifically looking at public practice and socially responsive art. So we asked the students to interact with the public and understanding what are these social justice issues and how should we be educating the public around these issues. So you might know the UCT rugby team. They have the special kind of engagement. This is how they dress. One of the students actually developed a lace rugby jersey. You can see it in the middle. There, the next one. Oh, sorry. Okay, so you can see it more clearly there. And how did the students feel when they put the jersey on? Did it change their notions of masculinity at all? Did it even, or did they feel that they could still perform the task that they needed to do? So it was quite an interesting space. Here's another project where we had what we call the 100 Hello Men, and there was a statistic around HIV and masculinity placed around it and put it in a public space. What did students feel about that kind of engagement? This is very interesting. Another project, one of the students looked at videos where we have different notions of masculinity, and he put together a YouTube clip taking sections of different videos and thinking about how do we represent the man in videos and how do we represent women and what does it mean, and if we put them together, what does that mean, and what should we be saying to young people if we look at music videos and issues around that, or how should we discuss it. This was also an interesting project where a student went and took messages that he chose specifically in Woodstock, and he put it onto chalk. He drew it on with chalk, and people walked past and interacted with the messages. People often stopped him and asked him, what is this about? Why are you saying this message? What should we be doing about this? And so it was a really interesting project for that student's personal journey as well as the people who intersected with it. Then this was a project where a student had to interview other students on the campus. What is your understanding of your identity, your issues? And so they had to think about what are the notions of masculinity, and she came up with a series of drawings for each of these people. This project was around catcalling. So a student interviewed other students on campus. What do you experience? What are the words that are said to you? And then she put them onto a public installation, and you can see from the second picture there that it was onto the campus and like right next to each other. Imagine if this was what you experienced. This is how you knew your life on campus. You came onto campus and this is what you experienced on a daily basis. So it was time to draw awareness to the community around these issues. Then this project spoke specifically around taking the lead. So who takes the lead in relationships? There was a series of photographs that she did with different types of poses, and to start to think about, does it always have to be the man who takes the lead, or can it be other people in the situation? Here was another person where he developed what we call piñatas, and inside the piñatas were symbols of masculinity, which he interviewed students with. So what are your understanding of notions of masculinity? And so people got the opportunity to bash them and say, that's not necessarily what we have. This is what we might think, but this is what we need to start thinking about. How do we change those notions of masculinity? Okay. So that's that. The previous one spoke to the art program. Then we look at another program where we went with the environment of engineering and built environment, and we got the students to, we lectured them on issues around gender-based violence and research, and then we asked them to prepare a presentation around how would you address these issues in a workplace setting. Why is it important for a workplace setting? So this is just some of the outputs and some of the programs that we had. So how do we do this? Through this process, we are contributing to graduateness. We're helping to change and intersect on the critical discourse that is put into the classroom, that help to change perceptions through that way. Haiku is really involved in implementing these programs, and we're looking at how can we think about discipline-specific interventions for students in their relevant discipline, so looking at the workplace programs. The other thing which is really important to us is that UCT is moving towards what we call an online learning or blended platform. So we need to think about ways of how can we take this discussion or this discourse into the online space, and how can we create spaces to have safe spaces for dialogue. We also use social media as a tool to do education in our classrooms. And this one particular project is what we took from YouTube, which we use to educate the students. So anybody can use it. It's not necessarily just something that we created, but anybody can use it. And it really speaks to issues. And so I'm just going to let it play.
I am.
Okay.
They bought beer and, asked me to drink beer and smoke kafa.
Because you were scared?
Yeah. So to this day, I don't know when the first guy raped her, the second followed, and I was the last one. I don't even remember if I even had an erection. It was just something that I didn't want to do, but I had pressure to want to be seen as one of the boys as well at the time, so I did it.
How did you feel? Obviously she was screaming.
Terrible. And I felt so guilty. You see, I'm scared if my mother would find it, my father would find it. No thought about how the victim was feeling at all. Anyway,
Why? Why do you think that was the case?
It's because when the environment accepts bad behavior as a norm, you don't pay too much attention to it.
20 years later,
Yeah.
you went back to confront
Yeah.
your victim.
Yes.
Tell me what happened. What did she say?
She just looked at me and started crying. As she was trying to speak, she said to me, my life has never been the same again since that incident. Not only you, 2 other men raped me.
After that incident, she was raped twice.
Yeah. And I'm married, she said. Sometimes my husband touches me, we're happy, but I just crunch and I don't want him to, and I'm not ready to tell. I've never spoken to anyone about that. And I live my life on a daily basis without even thinking of her. I think we need to say, where is political leadership about this?
And should President Jacob Zuma be speaking out on this?
Definitely, he should be. President Zuma, you may recall that at one stage during his rape trial, he said that a Zulu man, when he sees a woman aroused, doesn't leave her like that. To me, that talks to what you find in communities. The traditional beliefs about women and how women are perceived and how from your machoism you interact with women, and it becomes a norm, it becomes accepted, worse still by some women in our societies.
Okay, so we just use that as an example, as an introduction into the issues around what are the things that we should be talking about, what is your response to it, should we be forgiving the person, should we not be? So just to start thinking about that and having dialogue in the classroom, which is really important for us. So there's another question, if you would like to continue with the Twitter. We have a lot of residences, so students stay in residence due to decreased gender-based violence, because we see sometimes that some of these things happen in our residences. And what are we doing in active programming at the university? Okay, and we also, through our unit, contribute to evaluation research. In the residence currently, we are part of the team that is investigating issues around what is our understanding of these issues in the residence? What happens? What kind of incidences? And what kind of systems and mechanisms do we have in place? So trying to understand that. We also evaluate all our programs, and we provide program information and development of programs. And we also create publications through this process, as we should at a university. So just for us, in terms of, and I'm at the end of my presentation, in terms of further research, we think we should be looking at issues around male rape, and how do we look at systems around support and improved healthcare for particularly male rape. We have a big population of male students on the campus, and we focus primarily on the female students in rape. What about the male rape issues? We should be looking at, in our curriculum and our dialogues with students in and out of class, around a gender-based policy. We have a race-based policy at the university, racial policy rather, and we need to consider issues around gender, different kinds of gender, how do we interact, how do we understand them, and look at some interventions with males. And then we need to look at our evaluated projects and how do we upscale them to currently we only have certain areas, can we implement them in further areas of the institution, can we share them with other organizations, and how can we track the way in the process going forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Good. Hi, everyone. My name is Tejumade Adeniran, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Cape Town. I'll be presenting a paper I co-author with Kevin Johnson, and the title is Unintended Consequences of Technology Advancements on Domestic Violence Victims. Now, when technology is being developed, most times we don't actually consider the consequences of it, most especially the unintended one, and the effects it will have on domestic violence victims. Now, on the agenda, I will quickly talk about the issue of violence in South Africa, the risk factors for becoming a victim of violence, the most prevalent violence against females, and technology advancement and domestic violence victims. I will also talk about the misuse of ICT by domestic violence perpetrators. Then I'll move to talking about it towards the future, just telling us what to do next. And I'll entertain questions. Maybe that will be after the presentation. And there are a list of references in case you are interested in some of them. Now, just to explain to us what this is about, is part of my PhD research work, so it's still at the early stage. Now, looking at the issue of violence in South Africa, violence is intentional use of physical force or power threatening or actual against oneself, another person, or against a group or community that either results in or has the likelihood of resulting in injury, death, psychological harm. Now, if you look at that definition, it has violence against oneself, against another person, and against a group of community, which can be divided into three: self-inflicted, interpersonal violence, and collective violence. Now, violence is a global social problem. It exceeds cultural or socio-economic boundaries. So it's not actually only limited to South Africa. Now, everywhere in the world, we are talking about violence against women, against females, here and there, in schools. But when we talk about the context of South Africa, when we talk about the context of South Africa, research has shown that violence and injury are the second leading causes of death in South Africa. And South Africa has the highest statistics of gender-based violence in the world, and this includes rape and domestic violence. And at the same time, it has the highest intimate femicide rate in the world. At the same time, the mortality rate of intimate partner violence, it's 6 times higher than the global rate. So that calls for attention. We need to think about what to do to actually bring the statistics down. And that intimate partner violence includes domestic violence as well. There are risk factors that are associated with becoming a victim of violence. And from studies that were conducted in South Africa, some of them are widespread of poverty, high rate of unemployment, and income instability, alcohol and drug misuse. So many of these, of the males, they misuse the alcohol, they use it anyhow. Exposure to abuse in childhood, weak parenting, patriarchal notion of masculinity. Factors like that. But other studies that I found from all over the world, some of the factors are younger age, lower education, being unmarried, strength of social network, history of family violence. But the most important one that it's general to all the studies is being a female. The single most powerful risk factor for becoming a victim of violence is if you are a female. Females are prone to violence. And the most prevalent violence against female is domestic violence. And the definition varies across cultures, legal, and it varies from one study to another. So it's actually hard for you to compare studies done in US with the one done in South Africa, with all over the world, because the context is different and the definition differs. But basically, the term refers to physical, sexual, and psychological abuse directed against domestic partners. And when we talk about domestic partner, we talk about intimate partner, husband, former intimate partner, family member, friend, or acquaintance. Domestic violence is a frequent social problem that can affect any female, regardless of age, socio-economic, or socio-cultural status. It doesn't have to be, oh, she's young, she's old, it's cut across every age. And in South Africa, violence